and I've been in shoes and children's wear. I'll do that.
I'm section head in children's wear.
Yeah, and how long? Were you all working about 20 years at Eaton's?
No, I'm 12 years.
12 years?
I'm 18.
And I'm 11 full-time.
I've been working at Eaton's, well, 1 year on and 1 year off. Now it's been about a year and a month. And it was my first job. I worked there when I was a teenager.
What kind of work?
I worked on the main register or in, what is it, jewelry and cameras. It's quite a broad area.
Well, I worked in the shoe department, and just as a sales clerk, and basically doing stock and serving the customers naturally. The odd piece of paperwork, you know, because I hadn't been over in the shoe department that long. I transferred from the children's wear department.
I've been working with the Shoppers World store for 23 years since next spring, since they opened. My family have been in the Eaton Company since 1929. That means that from 1929 to 84, our family has been involved for our 3 generations.
What kind of work were you doing there?
Me? I'm a section head, actually. And as I say, I do all sorts of jobs, from the customers first, naturally, and then there's all sorts of price changes and paperwork to be done, and, you know, shelf, stock, you know, all that type of
I ran the baby department, and it involved, I used to make up the scheduling for the babies and the girls' wear. Did all the stock work ourselves, all the assembling of furniture, all the receiving, all the price changes and all the ordering for the department, and plus look after customers, run the cash, and any problems the staff might have, that type of, all those things. You know.
I heard someone say with the experience you have, you could probably run your own business.
Easy. Easy, I think we could, yeah. Anybody that's worked at Eaton's, yeah.
I like my job, and I really get offended when people say to me, you know, get a job, or they say, well, if you don't like it, leave. And I say, but I do. I like my job. I went to school for this, you know. I love cosmetics. I love what I do. I like to deal with the public.
I liked my position. I love my job at Eaton's, and I want to go back and work there. I don't want to quit. Like a lot of people say, why don't you quit then? Go somewhere and get another job. And I said, well, why walk away? I like my job. Why not change the working conditions within the company?
The show of solidarity for striking Eaton's workers was part of a mass march and rally, wrapping up a week of activities by the women's movement. CFTO's Carl Hanlon reports.
The demonstrators met little resistance as they streamed through the main doors of the department store. Once inside, they marched up the main aisle, waving banners and chanting slogans.
Well, the theme of this year's Women's Day March is Still Ain't Satisfied. This march in many ways turned out to be a victory for the women's movement. Organizers say they just hope they'll be able to celebrate again when the Eaton's workers get their first contract.
I think so. It seems to me that a lot of people that have been walking by have been saying to us it's about time. Yeah, ex-employees, some of them, and saying it's about time that somebody did something about the situation. You know, it's just been too much of a dynasty, you know, and it's had too strong a hold on the employees. We've been intimidated too long, and there's no reason for that. You know, we shouldn't have to be intimidated. I mean, we're doing a good job, we work hard, and we're just asking for a little recognition for it.
It might be hard for some people to realize that before this point in time, we had no say in absolutely nothing. For example, 3 years ago, they came along again to full-time people and said, we're going to take a day's vacation from you. We couldn't go to anyone and say, why are they doing this? This is unfair. They did it. They came along about 4 years ago and said, we're not going to pay part of your OHIP anymore. You're going to pay it all. We had no one to go to speak to, or even if you said to them, why are you doing this? I don't think this is fair. They would just say, we're doing it. And in other words, if you don't like it, there's the door.
What normally happens is they don't ask you to retire. They just make it life so hard for you that you do retire.
And a friend retired out of Eaton's after 18 years, and she's only getting $135 a month pension, and when she turned 65, she retired at 62, early retirement. When she turns 65, it goes down to $9 a month. And I thought, well, you know, what good is that going to do me if I have to think that way into the future?
When you consider that companies make money on pension plans, then it's a real scam. I mean, it really is your money, and they can take your money and lend it out at a higher interest rate and do whatever they pretty well want with it. And then you realize a $9 pension when you retire.
I've been paying into a plan way ahead of the time that I had to start. I was supposed to start after 5 years, but I've been paying into it 8 years. And the printout I got told me that if I stick to this particular plan that I have, that when I retire, I would be getting $38 and some cents, whatever it was, when I retire per month. And I thought, my God, I've been paying into eight years for $38. I mean, that's ludicrous.
They said that they were having financial problems, and everybody accepted a wage freeze from 27 months to 3 years, some of them.
And then
some of them got 1 cent an hour after 3 years of waiting for a pay increase. They insulted their intelligence by giving them 1 cent an hour after they'd worked there 16 years in a company.
You don't really know if Eaton's is really suffering or not because they don't ever have to show their books or anything. But we said that's fine, you know, we understand this is the way the economy is, and that's fine. We had no raise at that time either. That was all part and parcel of it. But then when the economy started to take a bit of a turnaround and things did start to get better, we saw nothing.
A large majority of people at Eaton's are part-time. And because they're part-time, not because they want to be part-time, but because they do not hire full-time.
You're not sure of what hours you're going to get. If someone comes along who's in better with the boss of that department, they will get the hours. And you may be there 10, 12 years, and they may be there a week, but they may get all the hours, and the person like me would get maybe 10, if I was lucky, you know. Well, it should be equal, you know. It should be to seniority, I think, you know.
So you'd be working 10 hours. How much an hour would you be getting?
I had $6.12 an hour. About 12 years.
No benefits whatsoever. Bring somebody new in, much younger, and if you're in line and they're in line, 9 out of 10, they're the one that's going to get the promotion, not based on merit or their working habits or how much they know about Eaton systems. It's basically a lot of it on their looks, and or if the manager happens to really think they're nice people.
Okay, what are you striking for? Okay, we're striking for our first collective agreement.
We're striking for better benefits for our part-time people who have never had any benefits.
Seniority, job security.
Basically, too, what they're fighting for is to get in writing, in black and white, what they already presently enjoy as employees. And that's things like jury duty, flex days, scheduled vacations, wages and benefits classifications. Those things we want in writing. You know, we don't want it to be left up to arbitrary management decisions and favoritism. And that's basically, it's the first collective agreement.
Contract now! Contract now! Contract now! Contract now! Contract now! Contract now!
No pension, no benefits, even coffee breaks aren't guaranteed. Oh, woman, when you work for Eaton's, you retire in poverty, yeah. Oh, mean old Eaton blues coming on down all around me. Way back in the 40s, we had the Eaton Drive. Oh, way back in the 40s, we were struggling to survive. Oh, these mean old Eaton blues been around a long, long time.
It's absolutely wonderful to see so many people here this evening. January 1948, 200 Eaton employees gathered in Toronto for the first union meeting. Tonight, in January 1985, some 37 years later, we are still meeting. With determination such as this is a strike we can't lose.
The Timothy Eaton Company, a family-owned department store chain, is one of Canada's top 3 major retail businesses. When the Retail, Wholesale and Department Store Union quietly began organizing Eaton's stores in the spring of 1984, it was little prepared for the determined anti-union stance of the Eaton's empire. In the world of Canadian big business, the Eaton's name spells power. Eaton's family members sit on the boards of corporations and institutions across Canada and own or have shares in countless other businesses, including real estate, advertising companies, major film companies, and radio and TV stations, including CFTO and CTV. These considerable ventures into broadcast media and advertising, as well as a strong social presence in the Toronto establishment, help Eaton's to promote itself as a benevolent, God-fearing employer that takes care of its own. Eaton's is deeply rooted in our Canadian mythology. Most of us have at least one story or memory connected with the place. It was for that reason Canadians were taken by surprise when on November 30th, 1984, 1,800 workers, most of them women, walked off the job at 6 Ontario stores in St. Catharines, London, Brampton, and Toronto.
Can you describe a little bit what it was like, the spirit of the organizing drive in the 40s?
Well, I think it started, you know, rather slowly, but it really gained momentum, and I think the people were really wanted a union because Eaton's had been very unfair to their employees for years, and they really wanted a union in there, but I think they got so, intimidated, and they were coerced, and they were threatened. They did that to me, as a matter of fact, one morning. It was a very cold morning. I was giving out leaflets, and the people, this was around about 7:30, it was just before 8, and the people were taking the leaflets. But all of a sudden, the people would go and like this, and then the hands would go back in their pockets. People, it was cold. And I thought, that's funny, they're not taking my leaflets. And I knew I hadn't grown a beard suddenly, so all of a sudden I thought, that's odd. So I started watching them, and then I noticed as they'd come up, they'd sort of look at me and go like this and go right by. So I turned around, and here to this side of me and that side of me were a gentleman each, well-dressed, good overcoats, you knew that what they were. And they were supervised there, and they were just making sure that as those people came in, they weren't taking that leaflet. In other words, they were intimidating them silently. Mm-hmm. This is what they were doing. And it worked.
Unfortunately, the Eaton Drive from 1948 to 1952 failed, but it did demonstrate that even the largest of department stores could be organized. On November 30th, 1984, the morning headline screamed, 1,500 Eaton workers have walked off the job seeking a first contract.
The Eaton strike was the first major strike in the Canadian retail sector. It was above all a women's strike, a strike of women who had always believed that at Eaton's you never talk back to the boss. It was a strike that would engage the resources of all the big Canadian unions and which would radically change these women's lives.
Why do you think that this union drive is successful now as opposed to 20 years ago?
Oh, well, I think there's not the fear of unions that there was 20 years ago. People didn't understand unionism at all. And now the people are younger, they're brighter, they're more alert as to what's happening around them. They're more aware if they're going to stay in a job with the company that they want security, job security. And you can't have it if the company has a hold on you.
I have been working at this Eaton store for 3.5 years as a cosmetician. A short while in comparison to a lot of others who have put in many years, 10, 15, or 20 or more years. As many of you know and have heard, 80% of the employees are women. Not only women working as a second income, but single women working to support themselves and their children. And single women just try to make it on their own. This is a very difficult task, as most of the women I know just cannot do this on the salary, benefits, and conditions at Eaton.
You were the first store to unionize, right? Yes.
How did that happen?
Well, Paul Wanamaker, it's your turn.
Is he here? Yes, he's out
Just
there.
out there. No, this is basically a gentleman approached Paul to purchase an item, and he just asked if he could, you know, give it a little cheaper because he made a good commission on his sales. And that's when Paul told him what commission he really did make. And the fellow said, well, what you people need is a union in here. And that's how it all happened.
We heard that being certified in Brampton, like a cheer went up through the whole labor movement, and it just kept going every day. We're reading the papers. What else? Where else are they? How many more stores have they got? And so when the strike came, it was just a natural for us.
I called different girls that I knew would be interested, and I think there was 10 to 14 at our very first get-together as to how we would approach all of this. And then we called one fairly large general meeting here in the hotel, and most of the people signed up that night. It was not a real hard job for this store. It was done in 8 to 10 days.
So when it came time to bring the people off for Eaton's, after it mushroomed like it did, I mean, after Bramalea, it was just like, they were like dominoes. The stores were just knocking over, and the phone calls we were getting, they realized they were going to have help. So they looked inside the union.
When I heard about Bramalea and what they had done, I had sort of talked about it with one of the other girls in our department, and she sort of felt the same way. We were sort of feeling each other out about it, because, you know, you don't really say the word union in Eaton's.
One of us met with the organizers March the 8th, and it just took right off. 3 of us went back in and started talking to the employees, and there was a high interest at that time, and we signed them up all over the plaza.
It was scary in the fact that, you know, I didn't really know a lot about unions. I mean, I really hadn't looked into it because I wasn't involved that way with it, and not being a unionized company or anything. As far as management goes, I guess I knew I was being watched, but up until the whole thing took place, the actual certification and whatever, they really didn't know who it was. I thought it was very well done myself. Myself and the other 2 girls, we stuffed lockers and coat pockets and stuff like this with information, and they all thought that a union member had come into the locker room and done this themselves, which we thought was, really quite amusing.
It was kind of a shock. You know, one day we're in working, the next day we're out on the street with a picket sign on that we've never worn before. We were just shattered. I mean, I have a cosmetic image to uphold.
Boycott Eaton's! Boycott Eaton's! Boycott Eaton's! Boycott Eaton's!
Shoppers stopping shopping, cutting up their Eaton scarves. Oh, well, yeah, telling old man Eaton we ain't gonna play, not gonna play in your backyard. Mean old Eaton blues, we're fighting back really hard. Win or we lose, what we've been through, it ain't no small change, I'm telling you. It ain't no small change we've been through. We're learning from each other just what strong women can do.
We've had people telling us they've turned in their Eaton's cards, and we've had people coming out and supporting us verbally and supporting us with money, which is great, buying us coffees, and, you know, it's been really great. Everybody's been very positive. There's just been a few negative responses, and they don't really matter.
We didn't really expect the boycott to take effect all that much by Christmas. We knew, and we were told, boycotts take time for the momentum to build up into them. But we do know that they lost millions. Eaton's did. It was tough for most of us financially, but it's amazing how understanding your kids can be and your family members and everything. And it was almost like going back to an old-fashioned Christmas where you just get a couple of gifts and everybody's happy. And the warmth on the picket line and the feeling that we had amongst ourselves out there was just something that I have never experienced amongst people I've worked with, and I wouldn't have missed it for the world. The kids, were fantastic. Even my youngest one said, well, you don't have to worry about buying us anything, you know, because they know how much it meant to me to be on strike, to stand by what I believed in. And they were all very understanding.
on strike. Don't go in till we win our first contract fight. Jingle bells, no more sales, Eaton's is on strike. Don't go in till we win our first contract fight.
I started in '66.
I know, that was easy then.
And I've learned a lot, and I've seen a lot.
You were out there, you were feeling bad, you wanted to cry, you wanted to scream, you wanted something to happen, and you didn't want to hurt somebody else or bring them down to your, low dregs sort of thing, so you didn't say anything. And a lot of people held it in, and then they started opening up and really, saying, hey, this happened to me, this is the way my husband was acting towards me, this is the way my kids reacted to what happened. And then they started really sort of fitting all their pieces together.
First week of the strike was very stressful for a lot of us, very, very stressful, because you stick a picket sign on and you're walking up and down the street in the freezing cold, and you're not really relating to the reason why you're doing it, because there was no education. We know we signed a union card. We know that we've exercised that right to seek union recognition. But that's all we knew when we walked, okay? We didn't know the pros and the cons or anything, and it was like a confused state the first week. And basically, we really didn't have any educational.
I'm not in favor of the union or the boycotting.
Why aren't you in favor of it?
I don't generally advocate unions.
Do you know anything about their working conditions?
Somewhat, from what I've read in the paper.
So you're not going to support the boycott then?
No.
Well, a lot of people like me don't have those guarantees either.
How do you feel
They're in their own business, and we don't get guaranteed coffee breaks, or we don't get guaranteed coffee breaks or lunch breaks, or even that we're going to be in business 6 months from now.
Yeah, they're probably earning a lot less than you are, though.
Not necessarily.
So,
I know lots of small businessmen who don't take home much money at all. Probably not as much as a lot of people who are working for Eaton's.
So do you support the boycott? They're asking people not to shop at Eaton's.
No, I don't have an awful lot of sympathy for unions.
A lot of it's truth that we don't want to believe. We are fighting a battle. We really are. And
it's going to take a long time.
And to try to beat a company with Eaton's power, it's almost impossible. They all intermingle, all these high finance people, like when it comes to getting our broadcasts, for instance, of the radio broadcasts put across, the commercials, that we couldn't get them over because Conrad Black, who sits on the board of directors at Eaton's, also owns Standard Broadcasting, which is in control of a lot of the TV stations and what have you, or radio stations. CFTO, which Eaton's are the major shareholders of, we had trouble getting our news put across on their particular station. But basically, the newspapers, we didn't have the problem that they had years ago, where Eaton's had total control over the news media.
What's it like on the picket line right now?
Well, we're there. The feeling is that, as anything when it gets into this length of time, we don't want to give up, but we would really like to get something settled as soon as possible. Nobody can afford to be out on the picket line not working. Eaton's doesn't pay us enough to be able to strike, let's put it that way. Who else is going to be there? Right, no, I mean from the union. Yeah, from the union. Anyone from the union?
We'll get the sort of second-hand information all the time. And again, we were always getting it through our women, that the few women that we had in the union, because we really rallied to them. Because they were the only ones giving us a straight answer.
I was just going to say, did you find that your reps on the line kind of as in our case at least, really didn't give you the truth. They told you what you wanted to hear, or thought you wanted to hear. It didn't matter what it was.
No, I think that they told us the truth.
Oh, we didn't.
I think what they did was it took a while in coming.
Can we form a subcommittee that writes a real good piece of literature geared to women, about the importance to women of first contract legislation, showing Radio Shack, showing FLAC, showing, you know, Blue Cross.
By the beginning of February, the Eaton strike was losing ground. It was becoming apparent to strikers and their feminist supporters that while Eaton's was the paternalistic employer we all love to hate, the larger and more important issue was the position of women as part-time workers, both in and out of the retail sector. Eaton's, with financial contributions from its temporary allies, Simpsons and the Bay, would recover quickly enough from the boycott. But the number of Canadian women working part-time with no benefits or job security was steadily increasing. As negotiations stalled, the women on the picket line changed. While they had always considered themselves to be strong women, a sense of their struggle as part of the women's movement was about to unfold.
The Women's Strike Support Coalition is made up of a number of different groups of women. National Action Committee, OFL Women's Committee, OWW, Ontario Working Women. It sprung out of an Ontario Working Women's Conference, and the conference was on affirmative action and equal pay for work of equal value. And then essentially what happened was, because the strike was such high profile at the time, they centered all their issues around the Eaton strike. So they related everything to the Eaton strike, and it became a focal point in that conference. So what happened out of that was that we decided that we were going to have to take some action, because this really is a real women's issue. 80% of the workers that are at Eaton's are women, and that it's delving into the retail sector that is largely dominated by women. And that we were going to have to get active in this and start to do some, and everybody, the encouragement, the enthusiasm was there, like, it was wonderful. And we decided that we were going to start this coalition, and we had our first meeting the Thursday night after the OWW conference, and we had a really good turnout of a lot of really, really active women, a lot of women with really good contacts from all different types of workplaces, women's groups, everything.
Look at the strikes that have been involved in the last few years. I mean, they've all been women's strikes.
Radio Shack.
Radio Shack.
And they're all for solar contract.
Yeah, and we could tie in with this anti-strike breaking legislation that the NDP already stands for. The steelworkers have an ad on that. I think we could make this into
Did you see?
What if we had a big issue?
What if we did do a big
wonderful.
Gee, that's great.
I think, though, the connection with the women's movement is politically important.
So keep wearing your boycott Eaton buttons, and we'll see you next Saturday, 11 o'clock at Yonge and Eglinton. Good night, everybody.
Even though wages are no longer based directly on sex and age, at Eaton's they're still based on whether people are attractive enough and thin enough and good-looking enough to please the managers. What is that except another word? Age and sex. Layoffs can still be arbitrary. The pension scheme is entirely inadequate. Now, this description, low
is all run by men. And I have come across a few times talking to some of our union members in our particular union, the men, of course, and I find them very condescending, as if I'm a little girl, and you know, like they can just sort of fluff me off, like I really have nothing important to say. And that really bothers me, because I think, I mean, what we did, we sacrificed a lot.
Good stuff. This is the kind of support that's being generated by the public.
Even the union movement has a lot yet to learn about the value of more women in the unions. And whatever they wish to do, I don't mean being top chief, but in all the categories that are essential or important, I think they themselves yet have to realize the strength in women, the power in women, and they think differently, and that's a good thing.
We were at a particular breakfast. I can't remember what it was. I think it had to do with the NDP at the time, and there were some pamphlets being passed around by women's groups, and it was dealing with you know, the equality issue that was coming up on April 17th, and everybody was getting buttons, and there were pamphlets going around, and all of a sudden one of our union men saw somebody reach over for the pamphlets and hand them around, and he said, "Oh, what's that?" And he grabbed it and he goes, "Oh, more of this woman shit."
Whoa!
And one of the strikers looked at him and said, "If it wasn't for this woman shit, you wouldn't have a job."
They tended to treat us like weak women at the start, compared to what we were at the end. And when we asked a question at the end of the strike, or near the end, we got an answer.
There's no way that I think the men involved in our union are really, I can't say they're not supportive, but I don't really feel a lot of that from them. I think we need more women in our union. We need women in our union, running our union, because it's run by all men.
It's better than Hanukkah, it's better than Christmas, it's better than your birthday, it's International Women's Day. It's
Well, we just joined the women's movement downtown. And it gave us a great feeling, anyway, that there was at least those women were interested in our cause, and I think it sort of boosted our morale.
It really was. It was a morale booster to know that they were behind us, but to actually see the numbers and to participate with them. And I think it also made me feel good that we were there supporting their causes too.
All these women, you know, all the sisters all together and everything else was just fantastic. And then the actual march and going into Eaton's was just the icing on the cake. It was just perfect. It just made everything seem more worthwhile. Gave us a chance to actually show them that we really do mean business, and you know, you can't stop us when we come in droves like this.
Business in the store came to a standstill as the protesters clogged the aisles and crammed the escalators. Workers at this Eaton store are not on strike, but employees at 6 other Southern Ontario stores have been on strike for almost 4 months for their first contract. The Canadian Labour Congress has been promoting a national boycott of Eaton's, and the strike has now become a major issue in the women's movement.
I wrote that to my girlfriend in California, and I said to her, you know, who would have thought that at this stage of my life I'd be out for the women's movement?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, I think I could eat this whole plate, no problem.
The alliance of the Eaton strike with the women's movement, and especially the storming of Eaton's by thousands of supporters, was an inspiration to the many other trade unions and labor councils involved. It built upon groundwork already laid by such groups as the Canadian Labour Congress, the United Steelworkers, and the Metro Labour Council, through their weekly rallies, financial contributions, and cross-country speaking tours.
Within the mall and inside the store, different shops. It's great when you look at them all. This is a candlelight vigil where Suzanne Oman and myself delivered. This is a letter we took up to Fred Eaton and up to John Craig Eaton's house.
Yeah, but we'll still join in once we get here. But it's important to be seen at the door. Sure? Yeah, let's go. As we go marching, marching in the beauty of the day, a million garden kitchens, 1,000 millocks gray, are touched with all the radiance that a sun in sun discloses. For the people hear us singing, bread and roses, bread and roses. People marching, marching,
I knew he wouldn't invite me in for tea. No, that wasn't him. That was his servant or somebody.
We haven't had any negotiations since about January. It was suggested by the Labour Board that both parties return to the bargaining table and try and negotiate a collective agreement in some way or another with a mediator. And all we can hope for now is that they're not going to pull the same stunt that they did the last time with the delay tactics and that kind of thing.
I've been on this picket line for almost 5 months, day in and day out. We watched the thermometer at Yonge and Eglinton go from 0 to -14, and that's without the wind chill factor. I never expected, as I said, that I'd be spending more than half of my first pregnancy on a picket line, especially
have one daughter living with me and 3 are with my husband. You know. And I used to partially support, buy their clothing and stuff like that for them, which I haven't been able to do since the strike started. But my daughter has a part-time job, which really helps. But I could not pay any of my bills, and it's been almost 6 months now.
On May 7, 1985, a contract was ratified in New York by the international president of the Retail, Wholesale and Department Store Union. The strikers themselves were not allowed to vote on the contract. After almost 6 months on the picket line, the Eaton strikers returned to work with a settlement that merely put into writing the practices Eatons had followed for years.
Nope. No word yet on whether they signed or not. I called the union office that says the picket line stays as usual. As soon as they know that the company signed, then we will know and we'll go home.
When are they going to notify us about going back to work?
I think according to this morning paper, Mr. Stark made a statement that it will be 2 to 3 weeks. They will not going to fight the contract or anything like that. They will just sign it. So that is as much as anybody knows at the moment.
It was a time for celebration, songs and cheers. The group of just 330 Eaton employees, most of them women, fought the retail chain to get their first contract and won.
Oh, we won our war.
They represent less than 1% of Eaton's workforce, but they've battled since November to get better wages and job security, and it's paid off.
But I just feel so good. 5.5 months. Just feels we've done it. You know.
They've done what others couldn't. In 1951, the family-owned business beat back a union drive after a bitter 4-year battle. But this tiny group of strikers attracted public attention, sympathy, and support. And nearly 3,000 Canadians cut up their credit cards as a gesture of solidarity. Finally, the Conference of Catholic Bishops and the United Church of Canada joined in. And just 2 days ago, a benefit concert for strikers was staged in Toronto's Massey Hall to a packed and appreciative audience. The tentative agreement still has to be ratified, so neither Eaton's nor the union will say what the proposed deal is. But getting this far is a major breakthrough, and it could prompt employees at Eaton's 104 other stores across the country into unionizing.
I was glad, but I didn't feel exuberant, you know, because I was wondering, well, what are the terms? I was suspicious. What did they have to settle for? And the paper, although there was nothing really said in the paper, any facts, it gave hints that it wasn't much better than what was offered. Like when I went back to work, well, I could hear people talking around the lunch table. Well, that didn't sound very democratic. Why did they have the vote that way?
The terms of the contract were not set out more than to say it was the same thing that we were offered actually in November. We've had no choice but to accept this at this point. Because of our May 30th deadline, many of our strikers are very concerned about that deadline and the fact that after May 30th, Eatons are under no obligation to give us our jobs back. So therefore, we have to accept the contract now as is.
I don't know. Right now, I feel like we're on a teeter-totter. I really do. I wasn't thrilled with the contract. I never thought I would have voted for a shitty contract, but I did.
In the contract, we had no wage increase at all. Still the same wage. In the job security and a good wages, I think we are entitled to that. Never mind that we are competitive with all the other businesses. We are not working for everybody else. We are working for the T. Eaton Company. And if they can make a few billion a year, surely they can give us a 2, 3, or 4% a year wage increase, and it wouldn't break them.
None of the benefits are included in the collective agreement.
which is going to make it very, very difficult to turn around and continue to organize stores. I mean, Eaton's is very aware that in our organizing campaign previously, we said with a collective agreement, even if you have nothing more than you have right now, at least you'll have it in writing. Well, their benefits are not even in writing, and they still can be changed and taken away and altered.
Is pension also excluded?
Customer requirements governs breaks, i.e. it basically goes by employment standards until they...
You get 2 breaks a day if it's not busy.
Right now for a 6-hour shift they get a half-an-hour break and a half-an-hour lunch period and a 15-minute break. Well, that 15-minute break could be taken away if, and it always was that way. If the customer requirements, it always was that way and it's still that way. Management's rights clause goes through the alphabet to M. It goes right, so there's quite a few management, they rewrote the book on management's rights. Total control.
We have to go back basically with what we came out with. Not much has changed in the contract, except they have now given us the right to organize on our breaks and on our lunch periods and before and after work. Plus they've also put in this discriminatory clause, which will be good. The management can't discriminate against us because we were in the union, or we can, you know, call them up on it. But I think that was the hardest thing to sort of swallow. It's a bitter pill to swallow. And we're all adjusting now. We've accepted it and realized that because of the labor laws in this province, we have no choice but to go back to work. But there's not one of us out there, oh, maybe 1 or 2, but there's no more than 1 or 2 that would not have stayed out there after the end of May and fought this on to the end.
I think we realize that it's not the greatest contract in the world, but it's an ongoing fight now. I mean, next time when we get to renew our contract, we'll get more. Then the next time we'll get more, until we do get, you know, a better contract, something that is better than the first one. And I think we all realize that.
When we asked the Conservative government, in particular Miller and Mr. Ramsay, to help us, they wouldn't. We sent thousands of signatures to the Minister of Labour, which is Ramsay, and we also, Bob Ray made a personal appeal for us, plus the women's groups appealed to Miller to step in and help us, and he didn't want to get involved because the Eatons pay so much to the Conservative campaign that they didn't want to touch us with a 10-foot pole. They'd step in and settle strikes all around us, but they wouldn't touch ours.
There is a problem with the grievance procedure that I see it, and I think that you'll agree with. I know we have grievance procedure, but the first step is the employee, him or herself, must first go to their group manager, the immediate supervisor. Now, that's great. Hey, we can do that. We can do that. But some of us can't. With respect to a little bit of intimidation, sensitivity, scared, not being sure of themselves. And this is why where you guys, the All Fails Women's Committee, the coalition, and everybody can come in and help us, is within that educational process. And we'll do our best on the floor to get the members out to the educationals and that.
I feel like the trade union movement could have come out a bit more with pickets, helping bolstering the pickets in front of the stores. Like, it was basically the women's strikes, or the women's movement, excuse me, that organized the most of the pickets. I'm not too sure whether everything filtered down to the rank and file. Like, you had your union activists out, and the people that were active in the left community were out on the picket lines. But when I went back to work, or even when talking to people from work, I didn't see hardly any boycott Eaton signs around or posters up, or there wasn't really the conversation.
I think that there should have been more really basic education. I mean, you're sort of the cutting edge of unionization in the retail sector, and it's great. It's really long overdue. It's really important. I think that the stamina and courage that were shown by the Eaton strikers has really inspired other people in the retail sector to get organized and go. I mean, you know that your strike won the settlement at Simpson's, for example, which was really an important breakthrough.
The union as such probably stood back, looked at us and wondered, how are we going to handle these people? You know, Because they probably heard stories about Eaton workers and, you know, how we were, you know, and dressed up pretty all the time and all this sort of thing.
Now we have to go back to your ordinary everyday routine, going to work, doing your job, going home, and we have to work with people that turned on us, left us out in the cold to do their fighting for them, but we're going to just have to make it work.
Well, it was funny walking in the first day. Everybody's been going out of their way to be nice, but none of the people that I was close to before have asked me to go for lunch or coffees or anything. Everybody, like, I sit by myself and I go by myself, or if I'm with, you know, another striker, then we sit by ourselves. You know, like I walked in there feeling so empty because I not that I was so thrilled about being out in the picket line, but it's like everything that I felt and all those people that I met and all those wonderful supportive attitudes that I felt from people, it's all gone for me now because nobody's really that supportive in there as far as, you know, except for the rest of us together. But it's like a real letdown. It's like my whole heart's just gone right down. And I'm thinking to myself, God, I wonder if I'm going to get through this week or get through, you know, the next month with the attitudes. Oh, I know I will because I'm strong.
Well, we've been known as guinea pigs, and I guess perhaps we are, and I still feel that, in all essence, that is probably one of the reasons because of our strike that Simpson's contract was, let's be honest, so much better than ours. But I think as a person we have to look at the situation again and say, well, we have the door open this wide, and we can push it open a little bit wider as time goes by.
Even if we do lose, I will still go back into work. I will hold my head high because I know that I fought the best I could to get what I wanted, and that's the bottom line. I realize that, you know, you can't live off self-respect and pride, but it sure does a lot more for you as a person than a $200 paycheck a week.
Win or we lose what we've been through, it ain't no small change, I'm telling you. It ain't no small change we've been through. We're learning from each other just what strong women can do.
You're sort of sheltered, like you really never see what's going on. You know, you live in your own little dream world. You go in and you open your little register, you go, you know, you serve your customers all day long. You're in your own little realm. You talk to the same people. Some people never read a newspaper in that store. Some people never listen to the news. Some people don't even know what day it is, you know. And you walk around in this vacuum all day long, and you go home, you're so exhausted, and you go home and you eat your supper, you get ready for the next day, and you go back into that same thing again without ever getting involved in anything. And you know, it's this whole thing, you get to be so shallow yourself that you don't even realize that these things exist, or that people exist that are really caring. And that's what I think opened our eyes, you know, like we really looked around and we saw, hey, you know, like we're wasting our lives. All the women that I've spoken to have just keep saying and repeating that there's no, we will never be uninvolved again, we will never be uninvolved again, we will always be aware of what's happening.
And we've become stronger.
Oh,
You know, like we've got so much stronger. Like things that we used to take before from managers, from other people, we won't take it anymore, you know, because we know our rights now.
When we were organizing, how scared we were. I mean, we were just, you know, skulking around like, you know, who is looking over our shoulder, who can you trust, you know, who can you talk to, and all the little things we did behind the scenes, and then all of a sudden now, like, I don't care. You know, you want to know something, you come and you ask me, and I'll give you any answers you want, or that kind of feeling. I'm not afraid anymore. You know, I just don't, I mean, it's not that I don't care, but I am not afraid.
The Eaton strike has served to benefit workers in other areas of the retail sector. Workers at 5 Simpsons stores in the Toronto area ratified first union contracts. At their ratification meeting, Simpsons workers gave a standing ovation in recognition of the contribution the Eaton strikers made to their fight.
Be assured there is power in our numbers. There is power in our sisterhood. There is power in our organizing. And there is power in our voices when they are raised together.
Shoppers stopping, shopping, cutting up their Eaton scarves. Oh, well, yeah, telling old man Eaton we ain't gonna play, not gonna play in your backyard. Mean old Eaton blues, we're fighting back really hard. Making changes, opening new doors. Working together, we're coming closer than ever before. Mean old Eaton blues, we'll beat you one day, that's for sure. Win or lose, what we've been through ain't no small change, I'm telling you. It ain't no small change we've been through. We learn from each other what strong women. Yeah, we learn so much from each other. And in our struggle we've come together. And we'll be back to fight another day. We'll get rid of those mean old